Let's welcome in Chael Sonnen, our ESPN UFC analyst, with us now on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Chael, busy time for you with all the stuff going on in the UFC. Let's start with just the sale that we read about earlier this week for $4 billion. How do you think the sport is going to change now that it's being sold?
Well, I don't think that much will change, like, for the fans, for example. I believe the presentation is going to be the same. As far as the fighters go, they're under contract. Those are bound. Those are going to be honored. And as far as the staff of the UFC goes, I talked to many people that work in the office. They said that the only memo they got is to say that it's going to be status quo. Nobody got a pink slip. I think they're just going to move forward. I'm so curious. I'm so excited about the sale. I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a fight fan. They've had 4 shows in the last 7 days. And I don't know what the new vision is. I am so curious to see. I looked at that sales price and thought, look, these guys are planning to grow this, but I don't know where you go. Again, they had 4 shows in 7 days. I don't understand how this thing gets bigger, but it's going to. And I'm so curious to see what their vision is.
What are your overall thoughts of UFC 200? Your thoughts on the card? Was it as good as you thought it was going to be?
I loved it. Anytime you have the height of anticipation, I don't care if your buddy goes and sees a movie and tells you how wonderful it is, or he tries a new restaurant and tells you they got the greatest burger ever. It never can live up to that. It just can't. UFC 200 was the height of anticipation for UFC and mixed martial arts fans, so it's very hard to deliver or over-deliver on that, so I saw some criticism. But in fairness, it was star-studded. I enjoyed the matches. I enjoyed some of the announcements that were made. I thought it was great.
Chael Sonnen's our guest here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We spoke, Chael, before UFC 200. You came on our show, and I don't think any of us had very high expectations for Brock Lesnar, who ended up winning his fight against Mark Hunt. Did he kind of exceed what you thought Lesnar was going to be able to do when he got in the cage?
Absolutely. He's terrible. I knew he was terrible. As far as skills go, I'll give you an example. He just got his blue belt in martial arts. And the way that works, the very first belt you get the first day you walk into the gym is a white belt. The second belt you get is blue. His skills are terrible, but his outcome and his ability to win is phenomenal. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the outcome. And I greatly underestimated Brock just as an athlete, somebody that can sit out for 5 years and step back in and take out a top 5 guy. I don't think there's any sport that happens. I don't think Tiger Woods could sit out 5 years. Floyd Mayweather, LeBron, I don't think anybody can sit for 5 years and come back and be a top 10 athlete in their field. And Brock's skills look like Brock's skills, which suck. But his outcome is phenomenal, and there's no way around that.
Chael, I was waiting for Mark Hunt to pull the trigger, and it just didn't happen. I know that he's waiting for that one-punch power because we've seen him be phenomenal in that. But as you mentioned, Brock Lesnar just charged in like a bull, took him off his feet, and really took charge by keeping the big man on his back.
Yeah, that's what happened. Brock had a game plan. He is a college wrestler, a national champion, in fact, from Minnesota. But that was 20 years ago. We can default to those skills all we want. They get rusty. I was a college wrestler. I couldn't walk in and make a team in a Division I room right now. It's just a different thing, and the fact that Brock didn't lose that step. I'll give you guys another example. I picked against Brock, and I picked against him heavily because everything in fighting ultimately comes down to one thing. Who's going to get tired before the other guy? And Brock Lesnar, in theory, should not have been able to breathe hard and keep his conditioning and pace for 15 minutes. That defies human logic. And he did. He went all 15 minutes. I don't know that Brock's ever gone 15 minutes, even back when he was competing regularly and the world champion. I can't recall a time that he was in the ring and throwing punches and working that hard for that long. He usually either got finished or he had a finish early on in the contest. It really did defy logic. And Brock was very honest with everybody going in. And he said, look, it was never me. You've never seen the best Brock. I had a battle with diverticulitis. I've beaten that. I'm better than you've ever seen. But I didn't believe him. I thought it was hype. It just doesn't make sense that you can not do something and get better at it. But he beat the disease. He had a great attitude. He had a fresh mind and body, and he performed. There's no other knock you can give Brock. His skills, still terrible. His outcome, still incredible.
ESPN's Chael Sonnen is joining us here on the Dan Le Batard Show with Stu Gatz on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Dickerson and Hood sitting in. Chael, is it good for the sport when the belt changes hands routinely? Like with the women, for example, I know the belt's been passed along here a couple of times since Holly Holm beat Ronda Rousey. Is it good for the sport when there's that turnover, or is it better when there's one dominant champion for a long time?
I suppose it depends how you look at it. As far as business goes, Vince McMahon thought about buying the UFC a number of years ago, and the biggest problem Vince had with it, and this is a quote, he said, "You cannot build a star unless you can control the outcome." And that is the reason the UFC is never going to make it. Of course, they just sold for the largest figure in franchise history. So Vince was wrong, and Dana White found a way around that system. He found a way to promote his brand. He believed strongly in putting the two best fighters out there as opposed to building somebody much like the boxing model will do, where they'll pick their opponents. I've always thought it was going to be a problem for him, but it never has been. I like the parity. I like that the belt changes hands. I think that adds to the fact that when you're in serious competition and you don't have a predetermined outcome, that's just the way it's going to go. If you look at basketball, LeBron James, the best player in the world. Well, the truth is he lost 8 times this year. Kobe Bryant in his best year lost 22 times in a year. That's what a real athlete will do. A real athlete that's out there taking on the best day in and day out are going to drop a lot of games and a lot of matches. And when you see these athletes with undefeated records, you have to kind of scratch your head and go, well, how did that happen? Nobody's undefeated. They're just not if they're taking on the right guys. So apparently fans have subscribed to the latter theory of, hey, we just want to see him take on everybody. We don't want anybody protected. But it has been a surprise to most experts.
Chael, when you fought, whether it was before the bout or after the bout or actually while you were fighting, it was always interesting to hear what you had to say, because a lot of times you're putting butts in seats based on what you're saying, your gift to gab. And I know a lot of that comes from you being a wrestling fan. Jeff and I are wrestling fans as well from the territory days. So when you're growing up watching Portland wrestling, watching Roddy Piper and the grappler Len Denton, who I just interviewed about a month ago, he speaks very highly of you. What do you remember most about Portland wrestling, and how much does that influence you as far as being able to talk people into the arena?
Oh, I love some of the references you just made. I love the fact that you used the term territory days. That stuff was great. And back then, and you'll relate to this, we're embarrassed to admit it now as adults, but when we were kids, we thought it was real. We didn't know these guys were cooperating with one another. We thought this was a true contest. And, it matters. If you evoke an emotion in somebody, whether you're talking sport or even in politics. If somebody's watching and they could turn the channel or they just don't care, you failed at your job. You have to get a reaction, good or bad. Don't let anybody be indifferent. And if there's anything I took from Len Denton, and I think he was one of the greatest workers on the mic to have ever been. And, I mean, he would inspire the crowd like you've never seen before. He used to wrestle under a mask, and then he'd go down to the bar when the matches were playing, and the guys at the bar would be like, I hate that guy. If he ever comes in here, all these things they were going to do to him. And Len would join in with them. Yeah, let's find that son of a gun, because he was in there with the mask on. But, I mean, those stories are great. Those guys stayed in character, and they kept the fans on the edge of their seat.
Chael, tell us about Submission Underground, which takes place July 17th in Portland and is available for all subscribers of FlowCombat.com. What's it all about?
All right, these guys are going to go out and they're going to wrestle for 8 minutes. There's no points. There's no scoring system. Anything goes. No strikes. But other than that, anything goes. Any chokehold, any joint manipulation, and they're going to try to get a submission on one another. If they can't figure it out inside of the 8-minute period, referee Dave Hagan will send them into overtime, and they will start with very dominant positions on their opponent. They will trade those positions back and forth until somebody taps.
I was saying that's FlowCombat.com, July 17th in Portland, Submission Underground. Chael, thank you so much as always, bud. We'll talk soon.
All right, gentlemen. Goodbye.
All right, Chael Sonnen with us here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.